Happy Yolkmas! We'll talk about the meaning of December 15th. We'll talk trades because everybody wants to talk trades, even though Denver can't really trade anything. We'll ask how far away are the Nuggets, and we'll preview what's I think actually a pretty big game versus the Sacramento Kings. All that and more on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day, being with us every day, Monday through Friday. We call that being an everydayer, hanging out with us. We do multiple shows a week. We're now averaging between like 6 to 8 shows a week, depending on how many games there are, which means that basically by the end of January, I'm going to be dead. We do those consistently because we love to do it, because we love talking about the Nuggets. We really do, and we appreciate you guys being along for the ride. Today's show is brought to you by Robinhood. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. The generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. My name is Matt Moore. I'm a senior NBA writer for the Action Network. His name is Ryan Blackburn. He's over at Mile High Sports. What's your actual title at Mile High Sports?
It is changed. I just call it Denver Nuggets analyst over at Mile High Sports. I'm a writer and a podcaster.
I always wanted to be analyst. They always wanted to give me the NBA expert, and I'm like, you can't be an expert on something you can't do, and I can't play in the NBA. I would do that. The money seems a lot better. I'm not sure, but the money seems better as an NBA player. Today's show, we're going to talk about the Kings game, which I actually think is pretty big. We're going to talk about how far away the Nuggets are. We'll do some trade talk because, well, we're going to be talking trades basically until the deadline. But we start with Yolkmas, December 15th. And it's really funny because, like, I don't remember. Like, I try really hard I've tried to pull that game from my memory banks, and I can't do it for what I thought that night. I was like, oh, they're starting Jokic finally. Okay. You know, it seemed very apparent. Like, I was out on Nurkic way early.
Oh, yeah.
So for me, it was like, that's what's kind of funny is in retrospect, it was like my reaction to Yokmas was anti-Nurkicmas because I just was like, you can't win with this guy. Yeah. And that was proven pretty consistently later with him as like the feature guy. Now Yusuf has carved out a nice role for himself, made a lot of money in the league. I think the Suns are very good. Yeah. But enough about Yusuf Nurkic. What does December 15th mean to you? Please let us know in the comments. But we'll start with this, Ryan. You as a Nuggets fan, what does December 15th mean to you?
Yeah, so I actually remember through the framing of the game before, where Michael Malone and I had done a project for Mile High Sports. It's unreleased. There are some things that we want to continue to try to do for it, but it's going to be a big project. Everybody should get excited for it. It's about Jokic. But it's the framing of it is that December 12th, 2016 was the last straw. The Nuggets were getting blown out in Dallas. They were so frustrated. And the only guy who had a positive plus minus in a game that the Nuggets lost by 25 was Nikola Jokic. He had a great game. Jamal Murray had a great game off the bench, kind of a premonition for what was to come in the Nuggets starting lineup. And Michael Malone said, enough is enough. I'm getting Gary Harris back from injury. Let me get back Nikola Jokic and put him into the starting lineup as well. And they face the Portland Trailblazers, go for a whole bunch of points. Jokic gets into foul trouble a little bit in that game, but you could see the vision. You could see the plays. You could see exactly what the Nuggets were going to try to do. They were playing a 4-out, almost 5-out system, really, if you were talking about Jokic, but he was the guy in the middle of the floor, everybody else orbiting around him. It was immediately beautiful basketball, and Nuggets fans have just never looked back. It was a very important moment, obviously, and one that it seems gets reinforced every single year when the Nuggets start playing better in December.
Yeah, and I do want to kind of go back a little bit and provide a little bit more context of that sequence, because I think that Malone probably should. I'm trying to think of how to put this. In retrospect, right? Hindsight, he should have started Jokic from the beginning, and he should have realized how great he is. He should have seen the beauty and the wonder, blah, blah, blah. I think it was difficult because you have to remember that, like, Nurkic really was considered he was considered a core player.
Yeah.
Like, this is a guy that had, he'd been selected to the rookie game, and it's like, woo, Jokic has 3 MVPs. But at the time, like, that was a deal. It was like, oh, like it was going to be Moutier and Nurkic and Gary Harris. That was going to be like the core.
And Malone he's always been a player's coach, right? And he's always been a guy that he's not going to give up on you just because you got hurt the year before. So he wasn't going to give up on Nurkic because he wasn't going to allow that to happen. He wanted the best for his guys and was going to try to put them in the great place to succeed.
So I think when Malone's trying to figure out what to do here, and I do think the front office was kind of like, from every conversation I've had, the front office was not like, start Jokic. Are you insane? He's the future. It was like, I mean, that front office gave Malone a lot of leeway to make those decisions. They stayed out of it. And so when Jokic comes over and is like, hey, put me on the bench, start Nurkic. This isn't working. We got to figure something out. I think Malone appreciated that. One of the things I will say is, if a player is good and says, hey, I'll go to the bench, start that guy.
Yeah.
Like, just start that guy. Because that means that guy gets it. That means that guy wants to win. That means that guy, like, the things about team sports, that guy gets. So that's kind of like one of the lessons I have is the next time that a really good player says, look, we can't figure this out. I'll sacrifice. I'll go to the bench. Immediately just start that person. Because that person gets it.
Heavy is the head that wears the crown, and the best rulers, Matt, are often the ones that are the ones that don't want to be in charge, the ones that don't necessarily want to have all the power, that understand what that power means. And Jokic for a long time has been he's been somebody that has been unwilling to fully embrace what it means to be like LeBron James or Michael Jordan or Magic Johnson or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or one of these amazing players that he's now being compared to. And it's just so important for him. And like, he has been that guy that has tried to push away all the credit for a long time, has tried to like, assist makes 2 people happy kind of guy, willing to take 2 shots, 3 shots and a half, 3 shots in a game, if it means the rest of his team can be happy and be good. He's always been willing to do what's best for the group. And that has permeated through the entire Nuggets organization. And it's one of their defining characteristics as an organization for a long time, is that they loved each other's success. And it's been that way for a long, long time. We're now getting up on close to 10 years, Matt, close to 10 years of this. And it is, it's been an era for a long time. And I don't want to let go to just that era. And you're never going to let go of just that era if Jokic and Malone are here. But as we're going to talk about, there might be some changes that need to be made.
It's been 8 years. I'm going to hold on to that because I can't deal with how fast time is going by. Like, there was a Instagram video of songs that turned 30, and it was all my favorite bangers from when I was in high school. And I'm like, oh God. Goes by. By the way, shout out Gary Harris in that game. 7 of 11 from the field. He 18 points, 4 rebounds, 6 assists, and a plus 13, second best to Jokic. Gary and Jokic were so good together. And Gary was the first young guy to get it. He was the first young guy to immediately understand it. Jameer actually came off the bench in that game. He came off the bench and because Moutier started. It was Moutier, Gary with Wilson, Gallo, and Jokic.
During January, when Emmanuel Moutier got an ankle sprain and they moved Jameer Nelson into the starting lineup, and then they were like, you know what? We're going to keep that. That's a good idea. Let's keep that just to see what happens for the rest of the season. That was an interesting choice at that time.
I was talking to Malone that season and was like, hey, I don't want to kick the kid while he's down. So, what do you make of the fact that every player is a positive with Jokic? This is later that season, with Jokic except Emmanuel. And Malone looked at me, he's like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, like every player has won their minutes except for Emmanuel. Every one? Because like Mullen's not gonna look at that.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah. And he was like, oh, well, I didn't know that, but Emmanuel's like, I want to stick with him. And he gave me like a really good quote about it. But yeah, like 5 games later, it was over. So
it's tough. It moved very quickly, man.
But anyway, happy Yokemas to all who celebrate. Hope you have a very happy Yokemas, and that this is, like it has been so often, a moment where the Nuggets really turn up after December 15th. On the other side, well, how could they turn up? Maybe a trade. We'll talk about some trade options. Ryan's got some things cooking. He's been working on this because I have things to talk about with this as well from a philosophical standpoint. We'll talk about all that and more on the other side here on Locked On Nuggets. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.25% APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on IRA account contributions. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. We're also brought to you today by BetterHelp. My favorite part of the holidays has got to be, there's like just a kind of a vibe in the air, and everyone like tries to be a little bit more forgiving and a little bit more kind. And like the whole cheer thing, I think is really nice. I went for a walk with my daughter who's roller skating today, and you got like the signs up with joy and the reindeer and the whole kind of thing. My kid loves to go sledding, so she's always hoping for snow. Having the best part about having holidays, if you're a parent, it's entirely different. It's crazy how it is as a parent. And that's not to say that you can't have a lot of joy if you don't have kids, just that as a parent, it means a lot more to me now than it did before I had kids. How do you stay cozy during those winter months? Bourbon in my coffee? No, I'm just kidding. Some is wrapping up in a blanket with a mug of hot chocolate or watching a movie with family. But therapy is a way to bring some comfort to yourself that never goes away, even when the season changes. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Find comfort this December with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making this party today. Appreciate you guys being with us. The chat's going wild tonight, like a bunch of like craziness.
I like the idea of some Rakia therapy. And by the way, can I give you a compliment? I read the Denver Dig today. Very good read today on the black curtain that has been the Nuggets injury situation, and just some interesting little insights from your own Matt Moore that you're not gonna get anywhere else. So make sure to go check that out, everybody.
Yeah, if you go to the denverdig.com, I've got a piece up that basically talks about like Jamal's plantar fasciitis. What I can tell you, like we talked about a little bit on the past show, it's not a major thing, and the training staff did not feel it was impeding his ability to compete in professional basketball, and therefore it was not on the injury report. The problem is like there's a wide history of this organization not sharing that information, but also that information is largely up to the players as well. And so there's a very big, like these things are just so much more complicated than they're talked about.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I like talking about, because I'm not super close to it, right? There's this big black curtain between me and the team, but you're close enough to hear what goes on the other side. And you're often like, God, that's a lot more complicated than it seems when you're 50 feet away. It just seems very different. Anyway, you can check that out at denverdig.com. Okay, so Ryan, I want to ask you this question.
Yes, sir.
We've talked about how it's difficult for the Nuggets to make a trade. We've talked about the limitation of assets. We've talked about all these kind of elements and facets. We've also talked about how, like, I'm a very big believer on this, that they had to fix the internal stuff first. And I don't know if they've done that. It's too early to tell. The Hawks game coupled with the Clippers game is a definite step in the right direction.
Agreed.
I'm just not like oh yeah, it's great now. Like I need to see the vibe be good for a month and feel like the team is connected and that they're moving past some of their problems. And that takes internal leadership, which we're not privy to. But you'll see those effects when the team plays and from talking to people. My question for you is, I do think this is an interesting question because you don't get to choose when you make a trade. Like if a trade's available for you, that's good for you. You better jump on it. And yet, are they in a position to handle that kind of instability if they were to make a trade? Like that's my kind of question for you here is like, do you think that if the Nuggets were offered a trade that would fundamentally improve them right now, that they could handle that transition without fracturing further?
It probably depends on who goes. It depends on who stays. It depends on the roles and how they shift and just how bought in everybody is to this particular version of themselves. And I assume what you mean is kind of a larger scale trade, a move that would involve moving Michael Porter because he's the only large contract that they really have other than Zeke Naji. I think the framing of that is interesting because they probably have to have a sense of desperation, right? Like you were there when Michael Porter was effectively saying, yeah, we kind of knew before the Washington Wizards game loss that it was bad and that we needed to be better. And I think they also have this general sense that, yeah, this has a lot of pressure behind it. We've got Nikola playing at the best player in the world level. We have expectations. We have a very pricey roster. We've won a championship before. We want to do it again. It was unacceptable the way that we went out previously. Now we can't let it happen twice in that regard, or we should try not to let it happen twice. So I think everybody is on track with that. I don't know if that is necessarily what's ultimately going to happen when there's a trade actually made and what those roles are going to look like when they shift. But I do think that they would be willing to accept it. The question is whether they can like have they built the championship habits enough that I've talked about before? That have they built those up enough to really accept that championship culture back into themselves? I don't know if I can answer that yet.
It also might be just do the trade and then figure it out. I mean, that's a lot of the season. I picked them to win the title, but it's basically based off of that concept of like, figure it out. They'll figure it out. Like step 1, have Nikola Jokic. Step 2, question mark. Step 3, profit.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the reporting that's been done about the Nuggets being active in trade talks. And I want to kind of relate what I know on that. I talk to people in and out of Denver, and inside it's the local conversation is always very tamped down. It's like, we're probably not going to do anything. We made calls. Everybody makes calls. We love our guys. Nothing really makes sense for us. Yada, 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 yada. The outside is always like, they are burning up the phones to make a trade. And that's with like everybody. That's most teams. It's like that. Yeah. And that's why some teams just don't make calls. Like the Spurs do not make a call unless they're like, we want this player. They don't call to be like, hey, like, what are you looking for? We'd be willing to give up this. What do you think about that? They don't do that because then there's reports about them and they don't allow that because they think it's disruptive to their team. The Spurs only call when they're actively like, we want this guy. Denver, on the other hand, is like, because of their situation, like, yeah, they've called a lot of teams about Zeke. It shouldn't surprise anybody. Like, no one's gonna be shocked at that. Like, I've heard that from multiple, like, oh yeah, did you hear? Like, they called this team and they called that team and they called this team. But that also doesn't mean that those teams had any interest. So those teams are like, yeah, no thanks, we're good. But then the people that are in that organization will tell other people, yeah, the Nuggets called about Zeke Naji, because that doesn't harm them at all. It's a piece of information that they can trade. So that's kind of like my only point here. What do you think is like the trade that Denver should make?
That's the thing, right? It's the how far away are they? Like, should they actually break up the core? Should they actually do that? The way that Michael Porter's playing right now and the way that he has sort of fit into what the Nuggets have asked of him, it's hard to trade somebody like that. I mean, he says all the right things. He does all the right things. He has made that clear. And yet, like, people have to separate the emotion of it with the logic of it, and that Jamal's not going anywhere. Aaron's not going anywhere, nor should he. Nikola's not going anywhere. Mike really is the only guy. And it's not a criticism or an admission of guilt or an admission of fault in Michael Porter. It is a how can they possibly get better? How can they possibly improve kind of thing. So if it were up to me, I would still be looking at the Zach LaVine move. I know that he has been considered at issue because of the contract that he has, but I see the weaknesses that Denver has from a creation standpoint on the ball, and I very much worry about them. Putting that all on Jamal Murray again is not a good idea. I think you need to have multiple guys that can handle the ball, that can create off the dribble, that can do those things, and they just don't right now. And now Russell Westbrook can do it from a different perspective, more as a facilitator than as a scorer, and that's fine. You also need that too. But I think they need somebody who can create offense. And that's kind of a tough place to be.
I'll kind of like restate our set positions. I am of the opinion, and I need to do better reporting on this. This is on me to go out there and troll for information. But I am of the opinion that Michael Porter Jr. is not tradable. I do not believe that he is a tradable asset because of his back surgeries. Mike's been available. He's worked really hard, and he's really proud of that, man. Mike's really proud of the fact that he's been able to play basketball. He worked really hard to be as consistently available as he has been. And that resume should matter. I also know that teams are terrified of quote unquote buying a lemon. They do not want to trade for a player that it's suddenly oh God, he suffered a back injury and that's it. Right? You've just sunk assets and it's a disaster. Because that's happened to a lot of teams, man. That's happened to a lot of teams where they've traded for a guy and the other team wasn't completely honest about the injury history. Now, I think the Nuggets have been completely transparent about everything. No. Pull that back.
Well.
Yeah. I don't think the Nuggets are misrepresenting Mike's condition in any sort of trade talk that's happened. But that also doesn't happen until the very last bit. Ryan is of the opinion that he's so good that teams will be interested anyway. Is that correct?
Okay. Not entirely. And the reason why is because I've thought about him as a second option in Denver, and there's a reason why I'm trying to get Denver to trade for another ball handler. And that's what other teams are going to be having to figure out too. Can Mike expand his role? Can he physically handle it? Can he do those things that, was he the prince that was promised that he was in high school? And will he be able to rekindle some of that? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but I think in general that if Denver can get this is the right time to do it, right? It's not next year. It's Mike's playing really well right now. You as the opposing team can get him for another couple of years and then see where it goes from there.
People want to comment on the Warriors trade. The Warriors traded a bunch of second rounders for Dennis Schroeder along with the Anthony Meltons. He's not going to play this year with his I think he's got a 1-1.
So he's got a torn ACL.
No, I mean a 1-1 contract. So he's not going to. He's out for the rest of the season. They got Dennis Schroeder, and the comparison is the Nuggets use second rounders to dump Reggie. The Warriors use seconds to get Schroeder. I will just tell you that there's I like Dennis, and Dennis won FIBA MVP, and I think Dennis competes at a very high level. There's a reason that Dennis is constantly on the fringe of being out. Dennis is the starting point guard for the Brooklyn Nets. He rubs a lot of people the wrong way, and I'll be very interested to see how he and Draymond get along. Might get along great, but it'll be interesting to see. Also, I'm not saying that that wouldn't be could the Nuggets use him? I guess from the perspective, not having to play. Would you rather have Dennis Schroeder than Jalen Pickett? Obviously.
Yeah, 100%. Sure.
Right. But does he really move the needle for Denver? No. If you're trying to make the comparison of Denver should have more second rounders so that they could acquire somebody in trade. Absolutely. This has been my big point of emphasis is the mistake that the front office made was not choosing to pursue sustainability through young players. It was locking off all options to other avenues. You have to maintain the ability to pivot. And Calvin Booth did not, because he believes very firmly in his vision. And the Nuggets are 5th in the West and just beat the Clippers. And we'll see. They win the title, he gets to tell us all to shut up. That's how it works.
The other thing is that Dennis, for the first time in 5 years, is above shooting efficiency, is above average. So like that could just as easily flip, folks. It is not like he is not a world beater. This could just as easily become a Reggie Jackson situation within a year.
Yeah.
So.
And like, would you like the Nuggets to have second rounders and be able to pick up another forward? Yeah, but I would like them to have another roster spot.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that when I asked about like the possibility of them waiving, I have been given the inclination that is unlikely to happen. The Nuggets are not going to waive anybody to make a roster spot, at least not right now, because of a combination of there is still a belief that those young guys can work out. Not me. Saying. Two, like there are financial concerns for ownership. Like that does bite into, like, that's dead money. And again, Messenger, not the one.
And it's not just Nuggets ownership, by the way. It's all NBA owners that are looking for a cheap contract, a 14th or 15th man to fill out their roster and stay under the hard cap. Like that is something that's very fair and very reasonable to understand. I will say it's going to happen. If it does happen, it'll happen after the trade deadline when Denver can't make any more trades.
Yeah. And then just like, there's also just like not a belief that there's a deal that kind of makes sense. So I do not see them adding somebody right now. And I'm okay if you're mad about that. I'm just telling you what I heard. Okay. On the other side, how far away the Nuggets, plus we'll preview the Kings game up next here on Locked On Nuggets. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. I told you the Broncos were going to cover.
Yes, you did.
This week, 3.5. Easy money. FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. I really like the Chargers next week. I think that's a really bad spot for you guys. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. I think it's going to be really funny if the Broncos knock off the Bills in the playoffs. It's going to be very funny to me. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. It'll be less funny if they knock off the Chiefs. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. I'm still not sure if the Broncos are good. I'm just really not. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets.
Are you sure if they're good? Are you sure? Not sure.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell.
Yeah, it truly is.
Do you want to talk about the Jimmy Butler thing or no?
Just briefly. I think we've said some things on this show that like
just generally you could just that can go so many ways. We said some things on this show.
Plenty of stuff. I think we said that a Jimmy Butler trade to Denver will not happen because of the financials. I want to amend that to saying it is really difficult to make it happen, but they'd have to add in a third or fourth team in order to do it. But there's a very good example that I have where Denver sends Michael Porter or Zeke Naji and a first-round pick to Miami. They send Dario Saric to Washington, along with some, like, their only other second-round pick, I believe. And then they get Jimmy Butler out of it, and they could make and kind of finesse the money that way by just offloading some salary in a different direction, in addition to getting somebody like Jimmy. So it is possible, but it's not likely.
I will say on the second rounders front, I'll just tell you, you can get second rounders. Like
if the ownership's willing to buy, Matt.
They're valuable as trade chips, obviously, from the Warriors' perspective. And there are good guys you can get, like a 3-time MVP, Nikola Jokic. But like, you can also very often get into the top 15 of the second round. It's just not this very high bar to get into. So even with limited assets, you can sometimes just buy your way in.
What about B-Ball Paul?
I mean, look, I think he'd be better. Like look, if this were me, if I were ownership, I'd be like, look, I understand you liked your guys, didn't work out. That's a shame. I have Nikola Jokic. This is reprehensible. Waive one of your guys and go sign B-Ball Paul immediately. Like convince I want him in Denver.
Like that,
but it's not my money, and it's not my team, and it's not my franchise, and I don't have to manage all the egos. So it's like,
Andy Bailey might be better at this point.
I think so.
That is
A or B player. A is Paul Reed, B is Andy Bailey. So you have this question: how far away are the Nuggets?
Yeah, I wanted to kind of throw that in there because they're now 5th in the West. They're 5th in the conference, and I think that at this point, it's hard to trust the Nuggets as a top tier contender, and I don't think that they are there yet, nor do I think that they are close yet. But you just keep looking at the standings, and you look at how muddled up everything is, and one good run from Denver and what is a really weak schedule for these next few games, like they could go put themselves on a run, they could put themselves away from this particular group and jump into the next tier. So I don't know. I'm not sure how far away they are because a lot of the stats I look at are like, yeah, they're about the 10th best team in the NBA. Record says they're about the 9th best team in the NBA. So it's hard to tell.
I have them surprisingly high. In the Matt Moore power ratings, which I have not started publishing yet, but probably will over on Paroxysm at some point. I currently have Denver as the second best team in the Western Conference.
Wow.
I have the Thunder, I have the Nuggets, and then I have the Mavericks. A lot of this is because mine are strength of schedule influenced. So Denver's played like a hell of a schedule. They just have. They played a really tough schedule. And it'll get easier in terms of opponent, even as it gets harder in terms of density. They'll play more Eastern Conference teams. And so like the Raptors, I think, are a good example of this. Like, yeah, but they struggle with the Raptors. Yeah, but they won both games.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, other teams struggle with bottom feeders too. Like it's a thing. Now, Denver is also the team that lost to the New Orleans Pelicans, who are 5-21, and the Washington Wizards, who are whatever horrid record that they have. So they are both teams, Matt. They're the team that beat the OKC Thunder, and they are the team that lost to the Wizards. Like they can be both. I just want to see them get a little bit more consistent.
I'll tell you this. Here are the teams that I think are better than Denver: Oklahoma City, Dallas, Memphis, and Phoenix when healthy. That's it. And
you're on Phoenix. We've battled on Phoenix offline.
I'm not sure about Phoenix because some of the underlying stuff is bad. I just think you got I don't know who they are yet. I got to see them with Kevin Durant for an extended period of time. And if that doesn't happen because KD's 35 and has had an Achilles surgery, fine. That they just might never get healthy. That's totally within the realm of possibility. But the core crux of Phoenix, I really believe in. As a contender. Doesn't mean that they'll absolutely beat Denver. It's just they're in the conversation. I don't think Minnesota's as good as Denver. I think that's pretty obvious to me. I don't think the Rockets are. I don't think the Warriors are. I don't think the Lakers are. I don't think the Clippers are. I don't think, and I definitely don't think this Kings team is. Which leads us to the Kings game tomorrow. I think Denver wins this game by 10 points.
That's a big deal because they, first of all,
not been good on the road.
See, they are now 1-5 when they have 2+ games or 2+ days of rest, Matt. So we can take that in. They're on a winning streak right now. This is going to be a fascinating one because the Wizards are their top level has not been as good as you would hope. The DeRozan numbers are really bad. De'Aaron Fox has not shot the ball as well as he needs to, despite the fact that he has had these massive games, these massive performances, but he also mixes them in with a 7 of 20 game pretty frequently. And I am very curious to see how the Malik Monk starting experiment goes because it's just a lot of offense. And yes, they can be committed to defense, but they just don't have the horses there. And then your guy, Keegan Murray, still waiting on the ultimate leap with him. I'm not sure whether he is a true third guy or just a piece in the starting lineup.
I like this matchup. Like the Kings have been a problem for Denver. But I do think that with where Denver's defense is at right at this particular moment in time, they're playing with intensity, and Sacramento has these, like, they just are not consistent on either side of the ball. Like, they have not been good. I don't know, as much as I think Denver has looked lost at times in terms of its identity and like who they are. They know who they are a lot more, I think, than Sacramento does. The Kings this season are 6th on offense, 17th on defense. Denver's 5th on offense, 14th on defense. So this is a little bit of a Spider-Man meme in terms of two teams that have been a little bit lost, but I do think that Denver gets the win here in Sacramento.
Let me ask you this. Fox is a tough cover for Christian Braun. Quick, agile guard, somebody who can snake the screens really well. Will get some separation for sure. He does want to take the jumper, though. So Christian, I think, could challenge from behind.
No.
Denver, he's not going to. He's not going to do
on the screen.
Yeah, I mean, look, we'll see what ultimately happens. I think they like I just said, Fox is probably gonna have a big game. But the other thing is that Joker's gonna be up at the level a lot in this matchup. Like, he's probably not going to, like, I don't know what is ultimately going to be there. I think that they like the way that Denver helps and the way that they try to kind of push everything into the paint. Guys like DeMar DeRozan are probably going to have to hit some threes. Like, and that's a big big no-no for them right now.
It's true. Absolutely true. All right, it's going to do it for Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us part of today. Appreciate you guys being with us. We'll see you guys again tomorrow night. We'll do a post-game show, and then Swipe will hit you on Tuesday with the solo show. Wednesday morning, we'll have No Jinx on a premiere for you on the channel and in the podcast, obviously. And then we're all off and running through the week. Appreciate you guys being with us. We'll see you guys again next time here on Locked On Nuggets. Be kind to each other.